Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man and Neil in Google, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
The beautiful black swan took care of that. There is no evidence for that.
Any evidence of axial
Not as long as the
rotation?
horizon's an apparent location.
Yeah, as long as it's non-physical, apparent, or refracted, or whatever word they want to use in defense of the black swan, then it's no longer physical and capable of deriving an R value from it. Bye-bye, globe. You don't have a physical sphere edge for a horizon anymore. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
I'm unmuted. Great. So I just came in here to say two things. One, if you post the recording and cut out 80% of my audio and even dub in your voice in post, is that winning an argument or is that being afraid? Because you could have just as easily separated my audio, played my audio and your audio, but you just cut mine out entirely. That shows weak debate.
Did you feel that...
And it shows
Sorry, let me get this straight. Did you feel that you had some sort of winning argument removed from the conversation when it was a live show?
I had plenty of my argument removed. I'd say about 80% of it.
What was your argument?
If you don't present it, then how is the if you remove it and you just
I've heard you moaning. Now I'm asking, what exactly did you feel was proof of anything?
All right. If you say what's an experiment and you badger me about definitions and then I'm like, all right, give me your definition, and I accept it. I just say, okay, that's a great definition, let's move on. And then you try to keep going back to it. That's weak argument, right? Because you're just trying to mire the conversation in definitions.
Okay.
Now,
can I respond, or are you going to babble on indefinitely?
Can
I respond? Any chance I can respond? Because you just seem to be talking indefinitely. Hello? Hijacking this show by talking indefinitely isn't going to help your cause.
There's two
I'm
examples.
just trying to respond to you and you're not shutting up. I'll try again. So, you agreed with my definition of what an experiment would be. That would be a hypothesis test. Yeah? You then later went on to assert that Cavendish was an experiment. Well, that would be a hypothesis test, meaning it would have... I'm still talking. You see, this is why I have to shut down people's lines. Now, you're moaning that you're not getting heard. No, I am shutting down your line while I'm talking and you are interrupting. So I'll try again. You agreed with my definition, hypothesis test. That would imply, were Cavendish to be an experiment, that it would have a valid hypothesis. Now, I point out, and there you go again. Maybe I'm censoring you while I shut you down while I'm in the middle of a sentence. So I'll try for a third time. Oh, no. Third time interrupted immediately. I'll try for a fourth time. Fundy, who is going to interrupt me and then moan about being censored. Shut your mouth while I talk and explain your error. Do it again. Interrupt me one more time, Sunshine. Just do it. So Cavendish, quote-unquote, experiment does not have a valid hypothesis. The reason being, the DV dependent variable, that would be naturally occurring phenomena, is a man-made phenomenon, not something occurring in nature. In fact, the very notion that it occurs in nature was superseded 106 years ago by Einstein. So that's no longer even something considered. It's considered bending for space. So I detailed to you how the non-stop fundy muting by you talking through every word took, I believe, 9 attempts for me to explain what I've now explained to you again for a 10th time. That the Cavendish experiment isn't valid, replaced by Einstein, and does not have a dependent variable. So the fact you've agreed with my definition of hypothesis test, and then I have detailed why it doesn't have a valid hypothesis, is to demolish your claim you have scientific validity for gravity. Do you understand?
Holy shit, you don't stop talking. All right, so if you're going to let me respond, let me actually respond this time. Because you will say I'm talking too long.
Shut up! Do not swear on my show.
All right, well, let's consider. You said there's no dependent variable. Well, the dependent variable is the distance of the object to the other object. He changes that, right?
Sorry, I just need to get some clarity. We're stopping. Bear with me a second, my friend. Hello, can you stop talking?
When I
will now mute you because you don't seem to understand that I host the show, and when I talk, I will be listened to or I will shut you down. That is how it will work. If you don't like it, get lost. That's your choice. When I talk, shut up. Simple. So, I will ask you to repeat what you believe the dependent variable is, and we'll ask where this is observed in nature. So what do you believe the dependent variable is for the Cavendish superseded 106 years ago by Einstein?
Independent variable.
Dependent variable. Are you deaf or dumb? I asked for the claim that we have a natural phenomena occurring dependent variable. Don't now tell me about the presumed cause. Tell me what you believe the natural phenomenon is.
Speak. Then what's the point, right?
What's the dependent variable?
The independent variable. The independent variable is the distance of one object to the other.
You just said that was the dependent variable.
Is the amount the other object has
I'm going to kick you out. You just said that was
there's no vacuum
You're
that
not
exists in nature.
shutting
right?
up. You seem to be constantly fundy muting my replies. Ask you again. I asked for the dependent... Right, that's your last chance. Get lost. Go and moan somewhere else, you dick. Yeah? Do you want to try again without fundy muting every single response or not? Last chance. We asked for the D, and he immediately talks through me. You going to bitch about getting censored again while you're censoring every word I say? That's better. Good dog. So, we asked for the dependent variable, and there he goes, immediately fundy muting me. Get lost. Get lost. Get out of my show. You're clearly here to cause double speak obfuscation and not listen to anything, because every single time I start talking to respond to his claim he's got a dependent variable, then immediately substituted as the independent variable, he talks through me. So get lost. You're being unreasonable. So get lost.
Doug, this guy's amazing. He comes on for a second chance, and he doesn't even know how to answer dependent variable.
Yeah, immediately starts telling me what the independent variable is. I've made it specifically clear what we're asking for. He won't give it. He doesn't have one. The independent variable is torsion bar
Who's
twist.
that? I just got back. That's Daddy?
Yes, Neil. Moving on. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No, that would, if it was, then you would have an Earth-based Coriolis effect. But we don't have any.
What, did you go home and do homework last night?
No, came back and moaned that he was being censored because me wanting to be heard on my own show apparently isn't reasonable. He should be in a position to talk through every sodding word I say without that being ever an issue. Oh, so what? Claim censorship? No, I detailed how Cavendish isn't an experiment is out of date 10 times. But he spoke through every single word and then claimed he was being censored when he didn't listen to a word of it. The 10th time I explained it today. Did it get any acknowledgement? Absolutely not. I got told that, no, it does have a valid DV. the ivy is blah, 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 blah. Talk through. Just here to obfuscate and double speak.
It's amazing that he goes right to the ivy, which is the thing you must manipulate to see what happens to the DV. But how do you know what the ivy is if you haven't experienced it? How do you know what to manipulate if you don't know what the DV is first?
So it just keeps coming back in. Doesn't he get it? We don't want you in here. I'll take you off server mute today to get lost. Go away. I asked you about 5 times not to interrupt my responses. I tried 10 times yesterday, Daddy. So you aren't tolerable as a guest. You just think you have the opportunity to talk through me constantly. And when I stop you, you moan. Yeah, you haven't acknowledged that you don't have as valid science for gravity. All you've done is tried to justify what the DV is by telling me what the IV is. That's where we're at. Now, do you want to try last opportunity? I've given you about 5 last opportunities to actually have a reasonable conversation.
You haven't given me an opportunity because you keep talking through me. And then you'll accuse me of
So
talking...
you just want to moan about the formatting of the show. You don't want to give us a DV, then fuck off. Get out. Piss off. Don't come back to my show.
Wow, I thought he was going to come back and give us the DV.
Well, no, he wants to come back and moan about the formatting. Oh, I'm talking through you all the time. Yeah, because I'm correct. And having to repeat 10 times while you fundy mute every word of it so you don't have to listen. Well, you want to moan about that? I don't care. Get lost.
Yeah, no one's forcing him to come.
Ugh.
All right, no
Keeps
Earth-based
bouncing back in.
Coriolis, no axial rotation.
Yeah, it keeps bouncing back in. This isn't a game, dickhead. Get lost.
Hello.
Hey, Owen.
Hey, good morning.
It's Daddy's at it again.
Yeah, he wants to
Who's your
bitch and
daddy?
moan. Bitch and moan that he hasn't had a fair crack when he doesn't listen to a word anybody says. Talks through every damn word of it. Anyway, we're still in the middle of housekeeping. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No. Maybe an apparent distance, but not actual, as far as I can tell.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Fairy tale.
Cartoons.
About the R value. Any evidence of the presupposition thereof? The R value.
Well, lots of presuppositions for it, but no evidence for it.
Any
No
scientific...
tangent line.
Say again, George?
No tangent lines.
No tangents, right. They haven't got a straight line to a physical horizon anymore. Black Swan, baby. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
It's a reification fallacy.
Yeah, good
There
answer.
is no downward bias. I had
Any...
to explain that to somebody on my show in the last 15 minutes today.
I couldn't watch, I was setting up. I was tuned in for the majority of your show. Go on, tell us all about it.
He heard about it, about the concept. So he's like, oh, incoherent magnetic attraction. So it's like, okay, so if something is universal, then why would you assume it could be incoherent? Like, something might be incoherent somewhere, but when it applies to something that is universal, that's like paradoxical, at least verbally, at least semantically. So, but yeah, I just tried to explain relative density and that, he said, but a helium balloon goes down in a vacuum. It says, yeah, because that evacuated lower pressure gases surrounding the helium balloon has a lower density than the helium balloon, so it'll go down. But if it was filled with regular air, it would go up. Because the only thing that matters is the relation between the density of the object and the density of the medium. That's the only thing that matters.
Right, and if there is no medium, then there's only one medium that's being described, i.e. stuff in it. That would be the balloon itself. So the balloon itself in that example has helium expanded in all directions and filling the helium balloon, which is somehow put into an arbitrary, very unnatural circumstance of being in a vacuum without it popping. Okay, but inside the balloon, the gas isn't pooling at the bottom, regardless of the balloon itself being in a vacuum chamber. The gas inside the balloon isn't being affected in any way, shape, or form. It's still filling the space.
Right, it'll still go wherever it can in the available volume.
Hey, Adam.
Afternoon, guys. I like that helium balloon in a vacuum chamber. It's a very good example of gas pressure and how balloons work and how that relative gas pressure of air pressure outside, and when you take that away, you see how powerful just those little heliums are. With nothing else compressing it in the atmosphere, the balloon expands. So that's how powerful those little tiny millions and millions of tiny collisions are enough to expand that balloon and hold that rubber stretched. It's great examples to me of the power of these collisions.
Indeed. Speaking of collisions, any evidence that you can have, last but by no means least, gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon.
Helium balloon in a vacuum chamber.
It's got a chamber around it, though. The helium balloon itself is a container for gas to press upon, and as I said earlier, it's expanded equally in all directions to fill the availability of volume. It's not pooling at the bottom of the balloon. Not going down, go boom boom.
You got a good point there.
No?
There seems to be a slight conflation of that, doesn't there? This balloon in a chamber. As if the fact that this helium gas in the balloon, and then you put that in a vacuum chamber, as if that demonstrates the behavior of gas in a vacuum chamber. It doesn't. It shows the effects of a non-rigid container when you manipulate the external pressure and how that affects the internal pressure of a non-rigid container. It's all that's showing to me, those vacuum things. It certainly has no demonstrative purposes with regards to gas behavior when placed into a...
No, but it still has a demonstration of gas behaviour inside the balloon, though.
Yeah.
Which is where I immediately take that example. Well, is the
that's
gas...
that's what I'm saying. When I see it, Nathan, I'm seeing the power of gas collisions being demonstrated there. That's what that apparatus, you might want it to show you more, but realistically all it's showing you is gas collisions and how they work. Look, and if I take away any collisions on the outside of that balloon by evacuating the chamber, look how powerful the collisions on the inside are now. They stretch that rubber twice as much as it was before. I mean, that's what it demonstrates. They're the things it is, not any kind of falling. Adam, good morning. What would happen if that balloon popped inside the vacuum chamber? What would the gas do? Well, one does, actually. If you look at the one that Zach was playing, one of the balloons popped, which is interesting because at that point you then see that some buoyancy is attained by the other balloon. Particularly when he takes the top off, you'll see he's trying to get the balloon to float back up to the air, but you see because of diffusion, there's still, when he takes the lid off, there's still the old popped balloon in there. So it doesn't float in the chamber still because, it's not full of air yet. But then when he brings it out, it goes up. But that's the reality. That when one pops, you see, you'll see that the relative stretching of the other one diminishes slightly because there's now an opposing pressure.
That wasn't his question.
Both of them pop.
Sorry, just to answer your question. What happens after it pops? Well, the gas fills the availability of volume, so the helium inside the balloon then expands in all directions. It doesn't go down, go boom, boom, and pull at the bottom of the vacuum chamber. It fills the availability of volume. That would be in line with the second law of thermodynamics. That's natural law. Or entropy.
Right. And so, and in Adam's case, if there were two balloons and there was a second one popped, then that would fill the available space of the container that has the vacuum, right?
Yeah, the gas will fill the space. It won't go down, go boom, boom like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank or a solid structure like a balloon skin poured into an evacuated vacuum. Gas will fill the space, unlike solids, which the skin of a balloon is definitely a solid. like a bouncy ball.
Right. So since they know that, and we know that, then what's the purpose of showing us a balloon with helium inside the vacuum chamber that goes down, but the gas inside the balloon is going in all directions? When popped, it finds the available space. Are they trying to somehow avoid, can't have gas pressure, or you can have gas pressure next to a vacuum and it won't go into the vacuum? Because once they pop it, it does go.
Well, you can either attribute it to stupidity or you can attribute it to malice, but divining people's thoughts in this regard is kind of irrelevant. You know, when they pour bouncy balls into a fish tank and say that gas behaves like that, or evacuate a vacuum chamber, put gas inside a balloon, and then put it into watch it go down, go boom, boom, and then assert that gas behaves like that, what, contained gas that's expanded in all directions in the balloon behaves like the balloon? No, it doesn't. Should the balloon pop, it will expand in all directions. But you could attribute that to pure stupidity. You know, gas go down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls in a fish tank. Shout out to Thunderfoot Clown.
I'm gonna have to go look at a few of these videos then, because I want to see what they're subtitled. Because if they're saying that this proves gas goes down, goes boom, boom, it doesn't, because once you pop the balloon, gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom.
Yeah, a combination of a solid and gas mixed together to form what we call a balloon. Yeah, an inflated balloon will go down in a vacuum, irrespective of what gas is in there. The simple fact that what you've got is more dense than the vacuum is what you're demonstrating there. The contents of that solid container are kind of irrelevant with regards to what you're demonstrating, because the main thing that's occurring there is the density differential between the solid skin of the balloon, irrespective of what it's filled, and the couple of molecules that are in that vacuum.
But that's your point. It's contained.
Yeah.
Did someone say container?
Yeah, balloon's a container.
If
I
you
would hope
popped a balloon inside a vacuum chamber and removed the balloon's weight, and the floor of the vacuum chamber was pressure sensitive like some scales, it would register the weight of all the helium molecules, or whatever it is, it's helium. It would register the weight of those helium molecules, and it would demonstrate that they have mass and weight.
What? So you can weigh a helium molecule?
Of course you
In
can.
a container.
Well, the thing is about helium molecules, they will dash off, but if you contain them within an environment, they...
Oh, so you need a container then? So, Flatsoid, you're right. Yeah, we definitely need containment. How do we have gas pressure on Earth if it's not contained?
It is contained by gravity, of course.
No, it's not a container. Gravity is not a force, nor is it a container.
Something like the wall of a container exerts a force on the molecules, just like gravity exerts a force on the molecules in our atmosphere and holds them to the Earth. It's very simple.
Atmosphere's an oxymoron. That's an assertion that you've got sphere-shaped air, and we don't have sphere-shaped air, so we're not going to assume that air is taking this sphere-shaped with the sphere-shaped air laws that go along with it. So no, we're not going to beg the question of sphere-shaped air and atmosphere, because that's you're begging the question fallacy wrapped up in your assumption of sphere-shaped air. So let's not do that. We are pointing out that you'd need containment, and you're saying, well, gravity. But in order to weigh the air, you'd need it in a container.
Disgusting. What was the question?
It's an assertion, a fact. In order to weigh this gas to assert it's got weight, you need a container.
Well, only because it will disappear off.
So you need a container then. So therefore, to juxtapose it by saying, well, weight is attributable to the gas that I call sphere-shaped, means it's going down, go boom, boom, with weight. No.
Device simply
it's not
needs
the
to
case.
be...
Why did you ask me for clarification just to talk through me? I don't really
And if you
understand.
stop
You're doing the
them
same
running
thing the
off,
other
you
guy
can
did. You seem to be talking through me, fundy muting, censoring even. Why would you
Molecules.
censor this? Are you scared of me pointing out natural laws?
Scales.
You scared?
You can
You seem to be talking through me.
helium
You
molecules.
seem to be talking through me rather than listening to me and then responding to my points. Seems this guy's scared of natural law.
Why don't you try taking it in turns?
Why don't you try responding to the fact that you need a container to weigh a gas, and then a juxtaposition with something that has no containment won't give you weight, because you need containment. Maybe ignore it or talk through it constantly because you're scared of it.
And look, I'll take on any question you want. I'll answer any question, but not in the middle of an answer that I'm giving.
Okay, how do you have gas pressure without a container?
So I missed the very start of that.
How do you have gas pressure without a container?
Well, gravity acts like a container. The atmosphere is an example of that.
Atmosphere I've already covered. That's a oxymoron assumption that it's sphere-shaped air.
And if you'd listened to my answer, A, we have pictures of it, and B, the etymology of a word has no bearing on any scientific value.
Let's just start with the first thing. You say you've got pictures of sphere-shaped air?
What it actually means. So going on about...
So we've got pictures of sphere-shaped air, as claimed. We're not going to get to tie down this claim and check its veracity. Scared of me questioning your claim?
Letting me finish my sentence.
I heard. You said you got pictures of sphere-shaped air. Now I'm clarifying it. Are you scared of the clarification of your lie?
The etymology of a word has no bearing on...
I'm asking about the pictures you claimed. Just going to ignore me indefinitely, so we don't have to test the veracity of this claim that we've got pictures.
Let the sentence out. I'll say it again.
Suck my balls. Yeah, I need to know where this picture you claim has come from.
Value. The etymology of a word...
Don't care about the etymology. I'm asking about the pictures you just claimed. Maybe ignore me indefinitely. Scared of clarification of these pictures you've claimed?
Bearing on the science of the
Yeah,
subject.
you keep talking about the etymology. Nobody cares. We're asking about the pictures you've just claimed. Maybe ignore me indefinitely. I'll make a declaration that he's scared because he doesn't have any. If he does, they'll have come from Narnia.
It has no bearing on the scientific value of the word.
Is it still going on?
To the word of atmosphere. I'm asking about the pictures you said you've claimed. Where were they taken from?
Up to your sentences, you'd repeat them.
Ah, suck my balls. Where are your pictures coming from?
Oh, space, yeah.
A space, that would be a natural law violation that you're trying to prove in this instance. So you're saying the natural law violation that is a sky vacuum that would have high pressure gas that we breathe here on Earth dissipating into it as per the second law of thermodynamics. That's going to be the place you've claimed you've got pictures from. No, that place violates natural law. You definitely haven't got pictures from there.
Doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's just a hand-wave dismissal. Yeah, it does. It violates natural law. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. Gas expands equally in all directions. It doesn't go down, go boom, boom.
At all? Am I going to get a chance to answer at all? Right, there's no such thing as natural law. That's something you've made up. 2, we have a force called gravity, which contains the atmosphere.
Atmosphere's a oxymoron that assumes sphere-shaped air. Your proof of this sphere-shaped air is to beg the question of the place you're trying to prove, that's outer space, and claim there's pictures from there, even though it still stands in violation of natural law, which you're now denying completely. Yeah? You're saying there's no natural law, entropy, you don't think entropy is real?
I just need 5 more seconds.
No, you need to suck on my nuts. You are denying entropy. You said there's no such thing as natural law.
Seconds, and then you can come back at me.
No, I will just declare what I've declared, and you don't have to like it. You can talk through it and ignore it, and the audience can hear it. He's scared about claiming pictures from Narnia, because that doesn't in any way justify or prove the second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum that would have the gas we're breathing filling it. That's what gas does. Gas doesn't go down, go boom, boom, and asserting that it's got weight requires containment. And his sphere-shaped air doesn't have containment. It's an oxymoron. Air isn't sphere-shaped, it takes the shape of its container.
I just need 5 more seconds.
I don't care what you need. All you need is to say I need 5 more seconds about 50,000 times so that every single time I make a point, you don't have to acknowledge it. So I detail natural law, you deny it and say natural law doesn't exist. When I point that out, you tell me that you need 5 more seconds because you've spoken through every single word I've said. So you don't have to acknowledge it, you're a coward.
I'm just showing you reality. Right.
Reality? Second law of thermodynamics. That's reality. It's natural law. Law of nature occurs always. That is something that is absolutely real. You're saying it's not even real. Entropy's not real, according to you. I have no respect for you anymore if you deny entropy.
Effectively have little springs on them, pulling them towards the earth, and that's why...
What? You think gas particles have got little springs on them, pulling them towards the earth? No. Inside a balloon, inside a vacuum chamber even, the gas will be expanded equally in all directions. It's not pooling in a balloon, you idiot.
I don't understand the difference.
Oh, now it's ad hom I don't understand. No, I understand that gas expands in all directions. In a balloon filled with helium, it's expanded in all directions equally. It's not pooled at the bottom.
The earth, not away from it. Well, it does to some degree pool at the bottom.
Oh, it does? You think gas goes down, go boom, boom? So you think that the helium balloon in a vacuum chamber is fatter at the bottom?
If you had a rigid box...
That's ignoring me. So, yeah, feel free to obfuscate and talk through every single word and then ignore me when you do listen. You're just demonstrating your cowardice.
I'm trying to answer the question.
No, you're not. You're ignoring every question I put to you. You're an abject coward.
Hello, you don't like me answering your questions, do you?
What? We're saying gas has got little springs pulling it towards the Earth? It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
Question. You don't want me to answer your question.
You said you've got little springs on gas particles. It's absolutely absurd.
You shit, you don't like me answering your questions.
I heard your answer. It's absurd. Are you deaf?
think my answer again. You see, you won't let me answer your question.
That's all you've got to claim I'm not listening when I've heard. I heard. It's got little springs on it pulling it towards the Earth. No, that would be weight, which requires containment, something you've not acknowledged. I've defeated this argument. You just keep circle jerking back to it. What, gas has got weight? Well, where's your container?
Some helium in a container.
So we need a container then. So back to my original question. How can you have gas pressure without a container?
If you put some helium in a container...
So we need a container, and Earth doesn't have one. Bye-bye, space. Space is fake. You need containment.
Some of the container...
Yeah, we know we need a container. Rumpus knows we need a container. You all know in the audience we need a container. Containment is required for gas pressure. That's right, Rumpus. Well, your sphere Earth model doesn't have a container.
Slightly greater than the top of the container because of the weight of the molecules. There you go.
So we need containment. So how do you have gas pressure on a sphere Earth model without a container?
Gravity pulls it down. You don't need a container with the
Gravity's to assert that gas goes down, go boom boom. And it doesn't. It expands equally in all directions.
It gets to a limit. It will only go so far.
Gets to a limit? So special pleading now?
There's a force called gravity that holds it.
Oh, so back to asserting your fundy belief in a non-force force that's not going to act on gas and doesn't violate entropy that you deny.
It doesn't violate entropy.
Oh, I thought it didn't exist. I thought natural laws didn't exist altogether. Now it just doesn't violate this natural law you claim doesn't exist.
What do you think holds...
Why are you asking me something? Gas does not go down, go boom boom, Rumpus. It's not got little springs attached to it pulling it to Earth. I can demonstrate it by putting any gas into a helium balloon, or any gas into a balloon like helium, and showing that it expands equally in all directions. Other than a special pleading fallacy about your sky vacuum you think you got photos from, you don't have anything that violates this natural law.
Oppose forces. Entropy cannot oppose...
Why are you talking about entropy? You said there's no natural laws.
Just like...
Why are you now talking about entropy and appealing it? Why are you appealing to this thing that you don't have?
We've got about 5 subjects on the go, and I'm trying to pick on one of them and finish it off. So you're talking about entropy and why doesn't the gas disperse and why it's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Not that you know the difference between the second law of thermodynamics and entropy. And the reason is entropy does not oppose forces. It tells you what will happen when forces are present. And there are forces present in the atmosphere, the gravitational forces, and entropy will just tell you what will happen to the distribution of molecules and things under those forces. It doesn't oppose forces, just like a brick is held together because of the forces between the different parts of the brick. If entropy was able to oppose forces, a brick would fall apart, but it doesn't because the forces inside a brick hold it together, just like the forces holding onto molecules hold them to the Earth.
Oh, I see. So, like a brick, does gas have intermolecular bonds?
No.
So it's not comparable then?
Any sort of forces doesn't matter.
Any sort of forces? A brick's got intermolecular bonds and gas doesn't. Unlike a brick, gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume, Rumpus. Why are you comparing fictitious forces that aren't a force with intermolecular bonds that a brick has? Gas doesn't have those, mate. Are you thick?
Because I'm demonstrating the...
You're not demonstrating anything. You're making a false comparison with bricks that have intermolecular bonds with gases that don't.
Stand...
You seem to be talking through me. You scared? You scared of me pointing out that bricks have intermolecular bonds, coward?
I'm more than happy because I can expose you on every single example. Right, so Nathan, you know that there's a force pulling you down when you go.
I know that there's no intermolecular bonds in gases, and you've just compared them to a brick and said it's like the forces that stop a brick flying apart. That's what it's like. No, those would be intermolecular bonds, not gravity. You're just a clown.
Come the forces...
You seem to be talking through me now. Who votes I get rid of him? Because he's lost. He's just compared the forces that are like gravity to intermolecular bonds, and gas does not have those. So he's lost. And he's just going to talk through every word from here on in. Coward.
Overcome
Before
by
he goes,
entropy
Nathan,
overcomes
before he-
gravity is what you're saying.
Just
And I'm
ascertain
pointing out
for
to you,
me. I know he's rambling a bit, but can you just find out what these tiny springs are
to
made of
oppose the
before he goes?
gravitational forces
I wanna
on a
know about the
molecule
springs
in the
too, yeah,
atmosphere.
What are they made of?
I'm demonstrating to you a principle which you keep on using, that entropy can oppose forces. It cannot. It cannot oppose
Rumpus,
forces. It
tell
cannot
us more
oppose the
about the
gravitational
springs.
force.
The springs.
Tiny
Tell us
springs.
more about that, Rumpus.
I missed the start of that question.
What springs? The absurd nonsense you spouted earlier.
Yeah.
We want to know what they're
So I'm
made
not
of, these
sure which-
tiny springs, Rumpus.
It's conceptual to explain it to you in a way you might.
Oh, conceptual, what does that mean? Does that mean real?
Conceptual.
Real? Does that mean real? Like we're describing here, the physical and natural world, reality. Is it real?
The force. Are you denying the force?
Seem to be ignoring me. What a coward. Rumpus is getting absolutely annihilated today. And like an abject coward, every time we challenge anything he says, he ignores us, because he's a total coward. So, intermolecular bonds in a brick, not comparable to non-force forces. I'll quote George Musa, gravity's not a force. So how is it comparable to intermolecular bonds that are holding bricks together? It isn't.
Scales measure, Nathan. When you get on the bathroom scales,
Look,
they are
don't forget
force
you
measuring
made up
devices.
natural laws,
They
too, on
measure
top of
the
that.
force of gravity acting upon you.
And you can put gas on a scale because, like,
the container moves towards the gas.
You can put gas on a scale. If you then put if you have a for instance,
what, a container? If I have a container, yeah, we'd need containment for gases because they expand in all directions. Now me, I've got lots of intermolecular bonds holding me together, unlike gas.
wandering around, and then you can weigh them.
Okay.
And you can do this by, as I said earlier, put the helium inside a balloon. You can measure the weight of the balloon in a vacuum chamber. You take away you then just weigh the empty balloon, and you subtract the two.
That seems like we've got two containers. Why have we got two containers in this example?
Really simple.
Why have we got? I've got a question, coward. Why have we got two containers in this example?
You're the big coward.
Why have you got two containers in this example?
Your position, Nathan. You wouldn't overtalk.
You coward. Why have we got two containers? What happens inside the first container, the balloon?
You're worried about being exposed as an idiot.
What, when I ask what happens inside the container of the balloon?
So is that your question?
Yeah.
You want me to tell you what happens inside a balloon?
Inside the container of the balloon, does the gas expand in all directions, or does it go down, go boom, boom?
It does expand.
Inside the other container.
Shut up!
It behaves like a collection of bouncy balls subject to gravity.
Oh, so gas will eventually pool at the bottom of the balloon then?
I'm answering your question.
So gas will pool at the bottom like bouncy balls would pool at the bottom then?
Question, but you won't let me.
Yeah, you just seem to be ignoring my response to your response to my question. So gas will behave like bouncy balls and eventually end up at the bottom of the chamber then? That's what helium does? Well, I'm not going to allow you to respond. I'm just going to tell you that you're wrong. No! No. If you put a helium balloon in any chamber, regardless if it's evacuated or not, the gas inside that balloon doesn't go down and settle like bouncy balls, you abject moron. Don't you understand how gas behaves? It fills the availability of the balloon equally in all directions. It doesn't settle like bouncy balls. What a complete idiot. Are you thick?
So the only thing you've got to do is to overtalk me. It's the only thing you can do. So
Overtalk you? You've just decided to describe gas, helium, as going down like bouncy balls? Well, they settle, mate. They don't bounce forever. They're solids. They've got intermolecular bonds like bricks. Now, you might be too stupid to listen and too arrogant to feel that you need to listen, or in reality realise that I'm pummeling you and you'd rather not respond to anything, and then claim foul while I point out that gas doesn't behave like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. Oh no, my friend. Inside that balloon, the gas expands equally in all directions to fill the availability of volume. It absolutely does not behave like bouncy balls. You're just thick, and I'll happily point that out while you cry foul. Because I want to point that out without interruption from a fundy who's being demolished.
don't allow anybody to answer
Nathan,
him.
can I ask him a question?
Go on then. Feel free, Flatsword.
Sorry, Rumpus. What happens if when this balloon that's popped in the container? What happens when the balloon pops? What happens to the gas?
Well, if you have a nice vacuum chamber around it, you could still weigh those molecules, but obviously...
That's not what he asked. Does the gas eventually end up on the bottom of the chamber like bouncy balls?
Bouncy balls don't. If they were perfectly elastic, they wouldn't.
So you're saying if I pour bouncy balls into a fish tank, they bounce around indefinitely all over the place?
If we were to say bouncy balls because we're making them big so you understand them.
No, we're asking about gas. Does gas behave like your bouncy balls example and eventually settle on the floor of the chamber or not?
I'm trying to give you an analogy you'll understand.
Yeah, you seem to be telling me how you're trying to do something rather than just saying, no, I'm not stupid. I understand that gas behaviour is such. It will expand in all directions. Free expansion into a vacuum is described in the second law of thermodynamics, something you deny. You're saying it goes down like bouncy balls, mate, and will eventually settle like bouncy balls will. They don't bounce indefinitely, mate. They succumb to entropy like most things. Yeah? Well, gas, which doesn't have any bonds like bouncy balls, will expand in all directions in that chamber. It won't go down like bouncy balls. You're just thick.
Even let me answer the other people's questions. So if you had bouncy balls that were perfectly elastic like atoms, in other words, they behave like atoms, you drop them in a vacuum chamber, they would bounce around. So you'd need.
So if they were like gas, they'd bounce around indefinitely. Therefore, gas with elastic collisions bounces around indefinitely. And your juxtaposition between bouncy balls with elastic collisions bouncing forever, do bouncy balls actually have elastic collisions or not?
Are moving around.
He's ignoring me. So what he's done is he's juxtaposed bouncy balls that do have elastic collisions. Bouncy balls don't have elastic collisions. Gases do. So they're not comparable. So saying when they have a comparable elastic collision, they'll behave like gas and bounce around indefinitely. Well, yeah, gas bounces around indefinitely then. So it doesn't pool on the bottom like bouncy balls. These things aren't comparison because one has elastic collisions and the other doesn't. Bouncy balls don't have elastic collisions.
Meters per second. You'd have to contain it, of
You're
course.
just ignoring me and talking through me. Every single word I'm responding with is being ignored, ladies and gentlemen. This man's a coward. He can't debate. He has to talk through every single one of his opponent's responses. So I'm pointing out that his explanation with elastic bouncy balls is false, because elastic collisions are not applicable to solid bonded bouncy balls. They have bonds. They're not elastically bouncing off anything. So his comparison's false, and he's saying, well, if I compare bouncy balls and make them have elastic collisions, like gas, then they'll expand in all directions. Well, yeah, well, that would mean that they'd expand in all directions to fill the availability of volume, precisely as gas does, and he's admitted. That's what elastic collisions do. Mean that they constantly randomly expand and bounce off everything without losing any energy. Well, that elastic collision means that it's going to expand into the sky vacuum, making fake space his claim that he can't defend. Because natural law does apply, something he simultaneously wants to deny here and obfuscate every single response indefinitely. And then claim foul at the end of it, no doubt.
Just a second, people. That means it's going at the
Yeah, he's not listening to a word I say. Not a single word of what I respond to him with will ever get listened to. He's a coward.
contain it. So that's the problem with gas, is it's moving around at 500 meters per second, and to weigh it, you have to contain it.
So therefore,
You're
without the
denying
container, there can be no pressure. You must have containment for gas. So if the sky was a vacuum, then the gas would fill that space. You need containment as declared by Rumpus.
If the temperature in a vacuum chamber was absolute zero, then you wouldn't, the molecules wouldn't be...
Can you get to absolute zero? Is that something that you can achieve?
I missed that. What was that?
Can you get to absolute zero?
Yes.
You can.
Oh, right, so that was a question. Not
That
oh,
didn't sound very
very nearly.
So can you get to, I'll say again, absolute zero? Yes or no?
So close that you can...
So that's a no then. The word absolute would be the implication of absolute zero, not very, very close. That's not absolute. Do you not understand what absolute means, you idiot?
Do you know how close we can...
Do you understand that you can't get to absolute zero, therefore another false comparison? What, if we got to absolute zero, everything would stop in its elastic collisions? No, that never happens. Do you know why? Because entropy is absolute. You won't ever get to absolute zero to make your comparison, because that's not possible. What will happen is gas behaviour. That would be non-zero behaviour of gas, because we can't achieve that. Gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume. And if the sky was a vacuum, then that would be a volume the gas could fill. Now, Rumpus can't listen to any of this, so you can be damn sure that the next words out of his mouth aren't going to be a response to my rebuttal.
Do you think we get to 3 degrees K?
So you can't get to absolute zero then?
So how close do you think I'll be?
So you can't get to absolute zero then? So your analogy where if you get to absolute zero, things would stop. Yeah, but we can't get to absolute zero. Things don't stop. Gas will still fall in line with entropy. It'll still have an entropy increase because we can't get to absolute zero. Merely a false comparison used by a fundy who needs gas to stop going in line with entropy. He even denied that entropy was real at the beginning of his time here.
Need to get to absolute zero to...
Oh, why did you use it as a comparison then? If you don't need to get to absolute zero to make things stop, why would you use absolute zero in your example? Well, because at absolute zero, things stop. Entropy ceases to take place, although that never happens. We always have entropy. It's a law of nature.
To 2K, and then you could weigh the helium. No problem.
With a container?
Without a container.
Without a container, there can be no pressure.
Wrong.
Show me gas pressure without a container.
This is where you're...
Show me.
You said before you need a container, Rumpus. You said it yourself.
No, I didn't.
Without appealing to
you
your
did.
fundamentalist religious belief in a sky vacuum that you simultaneously claim photos have come from, i.e. assuming it rather than proving it, without your fundamentalist belief that the sky is a vacuum, demonstrate gas pressure without a container. It's just that simple. Can you do that?
So you don't need a container for the atmosphere.
No, don't make your fundamentalist religious assertion. Show us gas pressure without a container beyond your fundamentalist religious belief that the sky is a vacuum.
Well, actually, you don't need a container. You just need a vacuum chamber.
No, don't keep fundy muting and chanting that you don't need one. Show us gas pressure without a container beyond your fundy religious belief that the sky is a vacuum.
And then you can measure the weight of...
You're just fundy muting me so you don't have to listen to my request for you to demonstrate that which you have claimed. Yeah, what a coward. You'd think you'd just back it up, right?
And you can do it without a pressure plate. If you go down to 2 degrees K, then you can just measure it anyway because it's not bouncing around so much.
Did
So
you
the only
say
reason
you
have
don't need a
problems measuring
container?
gases
You just need
is
a
they're
vacuum
bouncing around
chamber?
at 500 meters per second. I missed that. What was that?
Did you say you don't need a container? You just need a vacuum chamber?
If you had a pressure plate at the bottom of a vacuum chamber, you could release as much helium as you
So
like.
you do
and
need a
would tell you the
fucking
weight of
container.
helium.
So you do need a container, yeah. The vacuum
Well, you
chamber
need
is
to
a
create a
container.
vacuum.
It's a chamber around
Yeah,
it,
in
though,
a chamber.
right?
Yeah.
A container.
That's all. But the Earth doesn't need a container because it's got gravity.
Oh, so appealing to your fundamentalist sky vacuum belief as the proof? Oh, man. Didn't I just say don't do that?
Just like when you go on some scales.
Just like I told you not to use your religious belief to justify your religious belief. Don't be a zealot fundy here. How dare you poison my audience with your fundamentalist religious zealotry? Don't point at the sky vacuum to prove a sky vacuum. Don't claim Earth has sphere-shaped air to prove sphere-shaped air. What kind of fundy zealot are you?
You don't. You don't need a container, do you? Because
You stop chanting. You don't need a container. You don't need a container. You don't need a container.
When I get a moment, Nathan, address this weighing of a gas bit, because it's a bit annoying to keep hearing. You can't weigh a gas, okay? You can make approximations, and you can pretend you can fill a balloon up, stick it on a scale, and pretend that you've weighed that. You don't do that, and in any kind of industry, that's not how it's done. Because you can't weigh gases, what you can do is calculate the number of molecules and use conversion tables. So for any particular gas or mixture of gases, you'll have conversion tables, which will tell you at any particular pressure within the container what that relates to, and with the volume of the container, you can then calculate
Adam,
how many molecules are
Adam,
in
do
there.
you
And from that,
understand?
you
could
then
put
do a calculation.
Oh, sorry,
which
you
will
got
give
interrupted by... Sorry, Adam. You got interrupted
know,
by a
I know.
fundamentalist religious zealot who needed to chant through your description of what's actually occurring with gas being qualified with pressure. My bad.
Yeah,
Sorry
so-
about the zealotry.
Well, in any professional way, you have to do it like that. So you wouldn't be so stupid as to go, oh, I've got a cylinder here. The cylinder weighs 20 kilos. I'll put it on the scales. That's how much gas I've got, because that's nonsense. So what you do is if you want it, and fundamentally, you don't express gases in terms of weight. You express them in terms of volume and pressure. That tells you how many molecules you've got. But if you wanted to backwork that and express it in terms of grams, you could. But it would be a calculation. It wouldn't be you weighing the gas. You would measure the pressure and the volume in which it's contained, and then back calculate a theoretical mass value.
you ever have to do this just out of interest? Do you ever have to do that?
Back in the uni days, yeah. I've looked it up here. Look, so you have a cylinder of nitrogen stored at normal temperature and pressure, 14 psi, labelled with a volume of 29.5 litres, an internal pressure of 2,200 psi. What is the natural volume of the gas? So they're things, you used to have to do back in the day just to prove you can, because it's more to do with formulation science and stuff like that. So when you have to do that, but that's how you would do it to be accurate. You wouldn't.
Can I ask you a question, Adam? Can you do any of that without a container?
No, because you need the container to measure the pressure, and the container will define your volume for you, won't it? Which you need in the calculation.
Right. Makes sense to me.
Without the container, there can be no pressure.
Exactly.
Apparently, Rumpus knows this because he said you don't need a container in one breath, and then in the next breath he says you need a vacuum chamber.
You don't need a
That's a
container
little
to
weird,
contain the
Rumpus.
atmosphere because it's held in by the gravity.
How many times? Atmosphere, air, sphere, your fundamentalist religious belief that you're trying to prove by begging the question of sphere-shaped air. So it's an oxymoron where you assume the air is sphere-shaped. Well, air takes the shape of its container. That's what gas air does. It doesn't take the shape of a sphere, as per your atmosphere oxymoron, where you assume the thing you're trying to prove by asserting that air is sphere-shaped. Atmo, air, sphere, your fundy belief you're begging the question of, mate.
You're dealing with. If you're on the surface of the Earth, the gravity doesn't hold the gas in one.
Why are you assuming gravity? Gravity doesn't do anything. It's not a force. George Musa, gravity is not a force.
Well, that's what pulls you down in scales, Nathan.
No, it doesn't.
Really is level, Rumpus. Really is level. It's not a force, man. You're in cartoon land. Your man George Musa himself told you that.
Yeah, same as
Come
Brian
back
Cox.
to the really is level.
Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity
think...
at all. So yeah, people are telling him he just doesn't like it because he needs to assert that gas go down, go boom, boom. It doesn't.
Did he answer Adam's question as to describe what a spring was in relationship
Tell us
to...
what your bathroom scales
He said
are
it was
measuring.
conceptual.
Tell us what force are your bathroom scales measuring when you get on them? What do you think that force might be? Where does that come from?
Well, if I fart on them, will it measure the fart?
If you did that sufficiently strongly, I mean, you're full of crap. You could certainly, you might have a chance of having that measured actually.
And that measurement, would it stay there or would it dissipate with entropy? Would the scale stay the same weight?
Well, if you're doing a gas, then obviously that's not constrained by any forces except gravity, and the gravity is not sufficient to keep it there, so that wouldn't be.
The gravity's not sufficient to keep gas here. So even with gravity, the gas would fill the space. Wow. That's a bit of a turn-up, Rumpus. I didn't expect you to say that, so gravity won't keep gas here.
I know you distracted me, but...
I didn't distract you, I just listened to the words you just said. Gravity is insufficient to keep the gas here. End quote, the Rumpus.
Question. I asked you a question and
you didn't
deflected.
get distracted. You just snatched your own wig off. That's what you just did.
You just declared, and I quote, gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here.
Come on, Nathan. Be honest for once.
I'll be honest. Oops. Quote, the Rumpus. Gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here. End quote, the Rumpus.
Tell us that. Oh, yeah, I won't keep it the surface.
Stutter for me! I absolutely love it. That's right. I'll quote that a few more times on this show too. Quote, Rumpus. Gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here.
Well, yeah, but they can go horizontally, Nathan. The gravity doesn't...
Stutter for me! That's right, Rumpus. You messed up big time like every time.
Nathan, tell us what you think those scales...
Tell us what I think your quote was. Gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here. End quote. The Rumpus 2020.
Yeah, it won't hold it to the surface of the Earth. No.
It won't hold the gas to the surface of the Earth. No. Oh my God. Welcome to fake space. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space.
No one has ever said that, Nathan.
I've just said it. I am Nathan Oakley, I am a flat earther, and I will quote Rumpus, who's here in defence of the globe. Gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here, end quote the Rumpus, 2020. And now I will state, as me, a flat earther, Nathan Oakley, if the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space. Your non-force of a gravity will not hold gas here.
Nathan, what's the force that's being registered on bathroom scales? How about...
Well, according to George Musa, not gravity, because George Musa, quote, gravity is not a force. Or Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity at all. So whatever you think's holding the scale, some man-made device, that's nothing to do with unbonded gas, if you think it's gravity, take it up with George Musa and Prof. Brian Cox, who says there isn't really a force of gravity at all. End quote. Prof. Brian Cox.
Deny what Musa said 30 seconds after that when he...
What about Cox? What did he say 30 seconds after saying there isn't really a force of gravity at all?
Well, Mr. First, then we'll deal with Brian Cox.
No, we'll deal with Brian Cox. There isn't really a force of gravity at all. Brian Cox.
You don't like it, do you? I've just...
Don't like what? There isn't a force holding me to the scale of gravity. And according to you, even if there was, it's insufficient to hold gas here. And as per the second law of thermodynamics, if the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space.
You have to treat gravity as a force.
You say you
That's
can
because
treat
it's
it as a
not
force.
one, right?
And I can treat my Lexus as a Lamborghini. It doesn't make it so. Quote, George Musa, gravity's not a force. Quote, Brian Cox, there isn't really a force of gravity at all. And according to you, quote, the rumpus, gravity is insufficient to hold the gas here. So who cares if there's a gravity? It's not holding gas here.
Force of gravity. And Musa said you have to treat it as a force.
You have to? So what, you take the demands of a man telling you it's not a force, that you have to reify it? Well, good dog. You can do whatever you're told.
He says it's a force.
Yeah, he says you're told. Do as you're told by Musa, who simultaneously tells you it's not a force, but then tells you how you can think about it. Yeah, that's what this is all about, the heliocentric deception. People telling you what to think. Doesn't matter what's real. And in this case, gravity's not a force, but he'll simultaneously tell you what to think. Well, you do what you're told. Me, I'll point out that it's not a force, as per Brian Cox and George Musa's own words, that you seem to want to ignore because he tells you what to think. You pathetic individual.
So the word gravity is like magnetism. It's an umbrella.
Like magnetism, like the forces that are holding a brick together. No, it's not. Magnetism's magnetism, and intermolecular bonds are intermolecular bonds. Gases don't have them. They're not going down, go boom, boom. You're a clown.
Treat it as a force.
Treat it as a force? I can treat my Lexus as a Lamborghini. It doesn't make it so. The fact that a man telling you it's not a force and then simultaneously gaslights you and tells you to think of it as a force makes you a fool, deceived by these pseudoscientists. That'd be Musa, a clown pseudoscientist who doesn't have any scientific validity, but he can tell you how maths isn't a force, but you can think of it as a force, and all you'll ever do is precisely as you've been told. Told to think in a certain way. And you will, because you're a good, obedient citizen. So you'll do as you're told, as Musa tells you. And ignore the fact that what he's telling you to do is think of something as a force when he's told you it isn't. Good gaslighting, Musa. Good gaslighting.
Satellite. We use the force of gravity as...
It's not a force. You're a clown. All you keep doing is chanting your fundy belief in a force because someone told you to think of it as a force. Just telling us how obedient you are to Musa's request about how you think doesn't make it a force, clown. Quote George Musa, gravity is not a force.
It is a force.
Yeah, your fundy chanting's not going to change that it isn't, despite you being told to think of it as one. Just shows how obedient you are to the masters who tell you it's not a force. So the fact that you can abide by their double-speak nonsense just means you're obedient. You will think of it precisely how George Musa tells you to think of it, even though he's told you it's not a force. But you'll think of it as one because that's what he's instructed you to do. Not do, think. So you think of it all you like. Doesn't change the fact that it's not a force.
Space. 4D Ramonian space reduces to Newtonian...
Oh, who cares? Change of subject. Who cares? Gravity's not a force. Even if it was, according to you, it's not sufficient to hold gas here. Therefore, the sky is not a vacuum. Outer space is fake. They're pumping millions and millions of dollars into a fake place to provide clowns like you with pictures so you can assert that you've got sphere-shaped air. by way of a picture from a fake place that stands in violation of natural law. Gas expands in all directions. It doesn't go down with a non-force force that you can think of as a force, as instructed by George Musa. It expands in all directions. Even if it was a force that you're thinking it as, according to you, it's insufficient to hold gas here. Therefore, the sky is not a vacuum. Therefore, outer space is fake. Therefore, we don't have outer space. All pictures from there are fake. With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, however, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Hopefully, if I don't press the wrong button today. So stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!